Pitching. It's the one thing that everyone in sales thinks is the most important thing in the world. And yeah, it's got importance, but it's also the thing that people get badly wrong. And in the podcast today, I'm going to share with you a method to approach pitching and how to put some steps in place before you get to the pitch in order to ensure that you get the right result and stand a better chance of winning the business, because there's a number of things that people don't do, which means that pitching tends to be an awful waste of time. So let's get into the podcast and think about some of the things that you need to do to make your pitch more effective and to get the results once you've put a lot of effort and time into a pitching proposal that's hopefully going to transform your world and get your sales numbers on track. So pitching, let's hear about it. So pitching. One of the things that I talk to people a lot about is, especially, and I do a lot of work in professional services. And one of the things that it tends to happen on a regular basis is that people see the pitch as the really exciting part of the sales journey. And I've often had people that will say to me, oh yeah, we're having a conversation with someone and we're then going to go and pitch for business. And I say to them, okay, cool. Tell me a little bit more about the conversations you've had so far. And a lot of the time people will tell me, I've had a bit of a conversation. We had an initial meeting. They told us a bit more about what they wanted, and we've now got to go and pitch for them or provide a proposal for them to do that. And one of the challenges around pitching that people have is they often the case, pitch too early. And they pitch before people have given in details of what they're really interested in working through and what the issues are. But more importantly, they pitch on the wrong subjects in the wrong areas. So I'm going to give you your model in a moment that you can use when you are pitching, but a couple of things to take some steps ahead of before you get to that pitch process. Point number one is this: make sure that you have spent a really good amount of time understanding the pain and the issues for the other person that you're talking to and engaging with. And if you get asked just to come in and pitch without hearing really about what the pain and the challenges are of that organization, then you should be wary that you're not being asked to come in to work on a beauty parade that's gonna cost you a lot of time but not maybe deliver much in return. So really get clarity on what the pain is that's driving it. And if you can, that conversation that you have, an initial conversation, should all be around digging underneath the pain. What's driving this to be an issue? What's making this such a key problem? What solutions have you looked to solve it? You should be asking those questions to find out what's driving the pitch process at firstly. The second thing around a pitch is, who are you pitching to? One of the challenges, again, I work in financial services a lot, and people say to us, we're going to pitch to an organization. And I say, okay, who are you pitching to? Oh, I don't know. And I feel like when someone says, I don't know, I feel like saying, it's as if you're like going into a boxing match and in the dark, and you never know, there could be 10 heavyweights in the ring, or there could be one flyweight. I don't know. The reality is you need to know who it is you're pitching to. So ask the questions, who are we presenting the pitch to? What role do they have in the organization? What are the key factors for them? You want to be able to understand who are the ultimate decision makers in that pitch process. Who are the people that are deciding on whether this solution, whatever it is the right way forward? So understand who you are pitching to. Understanding the authority in a business is really, really critical. Or in an organization. So who's going to drive that conversation? Who's going to describe that discussion? Who's going to be in the room? And the challenge sometimes when you pitch and you've got IT, marketing and HR there in a room is you've got three sets of people that care about different things. And if you're not careful, your pitch can either hit none of them or have too much detail and bore them. And the challenge is, in many cases, most people tend to pitch on slides and they come in with lots of information about who they are and what their company does and how great they are. But half of those things aren't relevant or right for the other person. So find out who you're pitching to. Find out, if you understood the problem, you also want to find out, what timescales and elements that they're working to as part of the process and what's driving that timescale. So what's making them look at wanting to do the pitch process? What timescales are they working to and what makes those so critical as part of the process? Because some organizations will, tie people up in knots, or and they might be, pitching for asking people to pitch, and they may not still want to deploy a service, but they're looking to think about it for the future. So try and find out what's driving that time frame and what's making that so critical right now. And the final thing I'd say to you about pitching is find out what it is that they're looking for from a solution. What is it that they want to actually put in place? What's driving that? Where have they used things before? What's the core reason for them wanting to move down the path of your software or your service? And where have they worked and done things previously? Where's worked and where's not worked for them? And I learned the hard lesson a number of years ago, and I went to present when I was in my previous business to a large organisation, and I presented to this organisation. It was competing with me and another company called Salesforce in the CRM business. And long story short, I went to this organisation, and the CEO of the business turned up and started to come into the presentation. And I hadn't asked who was going to be in that pitch, and I also hadn't prepared the type of information that he and the two other directors wanted to see. And I was pitching all the information around the features and functions of our product and our software service, when in reality what they were interested in was its continuity and its stability and how they could make sure the information wasn't lost and for other business reasons. So find out who you're pitching to and what they're really interested in. There's a brilliant quote that I use from Chesterton, the poet and author, that says, "There is no such thing as boring presentations, just disinterested minds." And when we think about it, we often see people that present a slide deck of a huge amount of information with lots of information about when the company started and how long they've been in business and every single part of their solution, when in reality, that's not interesting to people that you're presenting to. And I've been in those meetings where they're into slide 10 and I'm like, I'm bored already. I just don't want to listen to this shit. So really find out what's driving them and what's interested to them before you go down the pitch process. And if they can't tell you that information, and I'm going to give you a statement that's really bold and direct and to the point, and maybe it's something you've got to think about really clearly, is if they can't give you that information, I think you should question whether you pitch. So I honestly think you should question whether you pitch, because pitching takes three things. A huge amount of time to prepare for the pitch, to be able to do all the work to pitch and do the presentation for it. B, it's the presentation or the outline on the day itself, which probably takes you a day because you're preparing for it and you're thinking about that more ahead of everything else. But three, it's the emotional energy and passion and commitment inside of you that it creates and takes away in the hope that you're going to be the lucky, successful ones. And you actually, that energy, that emotion just drains you away, especially if you find that you've then lost that business because you then start to think, I've put all that effort in for nothing. So really question these elements. And the other thing I should have mentioned that you should also question is, who else are they asking to pitch? Who else are they asking to pitch, and why have they chosen those organizations, and what has made them choose you? So ask the question, who else is being asked to pitch at the moment, and what is it about that organization that you really like, and what is it about us that you really like? Because if you do that work and you know that they've asked someone else to pitch because that they think they really like their quality, their price point, and they've told you in the conversation that the key decision for them is around best value for money, and you know that you're pitching to a finance director, chances are it's going to be a difficult one to win. So at that stage there, I might be in a position to say, look, thanks very much, but from what you've told me, I'm not sure we're going to be able to give you what you're looking for because we're not a fit because you want X and we're probably thinking of Y. And that can sometimes make people like that want you more and want you to pitch more and want you to get involved in their process. So just take these things into account when it comes to pitching. I see so many people pitch all the time. We did a pitch and they just don't get some of these basics right. So if you are going to pitch, if you have qualified those things, here's a little method. It's a 6-letter acronym called SOLVER that I want you to use when it comes to your pitching itself that you do. And point number one is this, is situation. So what I always like to do with a pitch is to clarify the situation for the other side that I'm working with. So one of the things that I will do is I will go in and say a pitch. I'll say, thanks very much. Great to have the chance to come and chat with you all today. What I've heard from the conversations that I've had with X, Y, and Z is you're looking to do dunk, dunk, dunk. So I would look to clarify their situation. And I would even, in some cases in the pitch, look to say, I want to check that this is still in line with what you guys are looking for right now, that this is still the issue you want to resolve. This is still the goal that you have to achieve. And get everyone in the room when you're pitching to clarify that this is the problem. And if you've asked the right questions initially, you should be, that's the issue that we've got. And you want them to clarify that situation. And the reason that's also important is because you want them to know and own that they've got that issue. They know it, but actually in the pitching process, it shows them that you've understood their challenge and really what matters to them more importantly than anything else. So the first thing is situation. The second thing around solver, and the O, is for options. And one of the things that I encourage people to do when you're pitching is to discuss different options that are available to the other side. And we often forget that one of the key things that you can do in a sales situation, people think they're going to be sold to. So when you say to people that there are other options, what you're doing is you're showing the other person that you've understood their world and you've understood that there are other factors involved in the decision process. And you've also shown that there may not be you. They may have the option of a competitor or to stay as they are or to do different options or to buy a brand new service or get whatever something else in place. And even though people might say, I can't provide an option for, they're already going through that process. So by the fact of you showing that you know that and you're saying to them there are pros and cons to that, it's a great thing to do. Marcus Sheridan's book, They Asked You Answer, and it's a brilliant book because it talks around how your prospects already think things. The people you're pitching to already think things in their head. So actually, don't try and think that you're not going to give them those options. Tell them, I understand you have these 3 different options. And maybe what you can do is suggest, an option that's a viable option. You can suggest maybe a mad option. You can suggest an obvious option. You can suggest sort of doing nothing. But tell them and show them that they've got options and say to them, look, I understand you've got these options and actually making a change or moving to something different or putting something in place is going to require you to choose one of them. And I would always say to people at that point, and I respect the decision you make, whatever you choose to do. I'd love to work with you, but if you choose that that's the right option, then I respect that. You're sort of saying at that point, whilst we want to work with you, we want what's best for you. And that builds trust and allegiance with the other person, especially if you deliver that in a sincere, empathetic way that they think you're genuine and real. So the next thing of the L is to list out those options. So list out the pros and cons of each path. And, part of that option process is to say, hey, look, if we look at option number 1, you could go down this path. The good things of this are this, but the potential risks are this, and this, and this. And what that does is, again, show that you've understood their situation, but it also shows that you're able to create a little bit of doubt and uncertainty, maybe in their mind, around some of the paths that they're taking. Now, sometimes when it involves competitors, then I'm not saying you should, literally criticize competitors, but it sometimes can give you the option to maybe talk, especially if they're working with someone that's maybe got a longer term contract. One of the cons of that might be that they're tied into a 5-year period. Well, they may not know that. Their company may not have shared that information. So it might be think, wow, I didn't know that if we in with X, Y, and Z, we're going to be tied in for 5 years. Oh, that puts a bit of concern in my mind and the fact that they know that. So list out the pros and cons of each path. And try not to be a bit, especially if your option is one of the options on the table, which it should be, try not to be too favourable to yours, because if you think that yours has only got positives and no negatives, they're going to think, well, this is bullshit, this doesn't make sense. So outline the fact of working with you might be that it's a bit more pricey than other organisations and that the implementation process might take a little bit longer because you do it in a quality way. But those are the cons, but the pros are you get the solution delivered, whatever. So outline the pros and cons in a list. The V of solver stands for visualize. And what I want you to try and do, and this is sometimes difficult depending on who you're speaking to. So if you're speaking to people that are a bit more, financial background or conscientious style, then sometimes you've got to be able to sort of show facts rather than visual information. But, one of the things you might want to try and do is tell a bit of a story. So help them visualize. So one of the things that, I talk to people a lot about when it comes to sales is people know that there's a problem and they want to feel understood, but they don't know how the problem is going to be solved. So one of the things that you can do is to say, look, let me give you a picture of what would happen if you chose our option. Day 1, this would happen. Day 10, this would happen, whatever else. And visualize and show them the evidence and details of that, especially if you're talking to a series of maybe conscientious accountant types, or if you're talking to a more of a more engaging liberal leader. You might, picture the story. You're in a position with 3 months down the line and tell them that story. Tell them the story of how the solution that you've put in place is going to solve the problem for them. And help them visualize it, help them bring it to life. People always want to know the how of you're going to make that happen. And the how will also include the bits of that are challenging, but how are you going to bring that to life? So we've done, we've got 2 left on the solver model. And the E stands for examples. So, what people want to see is when you give them that option of how, give them an example of other people, of how it's worked for them, that people that you've worked with, how in a similar position to the people you're talking to, had this issue, had this challenge, had these different options, chose your option, and then were in a position where they were really delighted by the result. And what that's doing is by giving them examples, you're giving them evidence and proof that you can bring the how to life. Because your prospects and the people you're pitching to want success. They want the right result. They want to guarantee that what they're doing is going to get a result. And the reality is you sometimes got to give them examples. And the big mistake I often see as well is people giving examples of people that are not the same as the people that they work with, or in a very different type of industry or different size. And it's like people come to me and sometimes say, we're experts in selling. We've worked for people like McDonald's. And I'm like, well, I'm not McDonald's. I'm a smaller business than McDonald's. Why does that, it's not a relevant example. But give examples of other people of how you've made this happen and how you've delivered this result. And it can be a real impact. And then the final thing is the R is results. Here's the examples of what we've done. And actually, here's the results that the people that we work with got, but here's the results we're going to expect with you. So over the next 3 months, 6 months, whatever the process is, this is what will happen. This is what we'll put in place. These are the results we'll achieve. If you can do this bit and this bit here, it's your side, we will deliver these other elements to deliver the end result that you want. Because when we think about it in the cold light of day, prospects in all situations are not buying you, they're not buying your company, they're buying the outcome of what you offer. So if you can put together the outline of the results that they can achieve and give them proof and evidence of that and how to do it, as well as making them aware of the other options available to them, you're going to give them the best chance to see that your solution is going to be the right one for them. So look, go back to Solver, situation, options, list out the options, help them to visualize or see how they can come to life, give them examples, and then show them the results from that. And I think you're going to be in a great position to hopefully win the pitch that you want. And if you've also asked the questions, like I said at the start, to make sure you know who you're pitching to and why it's driving the agenda and what's the key criteria for them and the timescales and who's going to make the decision, you can also hopefully try and minimize the risk of it going to someone else. And you never know. Of course, in pitching situations, sometimes it can be anything on the day. We could have a challenge. It can be a gut feel. But the one thing that I talk about a lot, and there's a podcast I've done around this, is the hidden 10%. And I always think the hidden 10% in sales comes through. And that's that moment in sales where you are selling not what you do, but you're selling what's right for the client, and the real care and passion to want what's best for them. And in many cases, even though pitches have been more expensive than others, I've had people that have chosen my service because they can see that I care and I want the right result for them. So focus on that hidden 10%. I'll put a link into the podcast that we've done on the hidden 10%. But that plus the solver model and asking the right questions is going to give you the best chance of pitching. And as I say, if you don't get those answers, if you can't get that clarity, then maybe have a question as to whether it's the right thing to do in the first place. But look, pitches are something people love. They get themselves wound up for. It takes a lot of energy and time. Time is your most precious asset. I'm grateful that you're listening to this podcast, but just be aware that if you are committing to doing those things, that you're not going down a path that can take a huge amount of time and energy but not get you anywhere. So, look, as I always do, by the way, let me know if you've got other methods that you've used for pitching, written in the comments section below. If you think I'm talking tripe, if you think that none of this stuff makes sense, if you think I'm talking a load of codswallop, tell me. I've got no problems in you sharing your honest thoughts. Be interested to know what you think. But look, these are the methods that I've worked with and used to win a number of pitches over time. And like, if you use them the same way, it can help you as well. So look, one of the things I always try and do is finish the podcast on a positive story, an inspirational story. And I wanted just to talk today about a Navy veteran called Paul Smith. He was a veteran who was given sadly some life-threatening injuries in a car crash 33 years ago, and he was left paralysed for 12 years, and he couldn't do much. And he decided that he wanted to, raise some money for brain tumour research. And he cycled on a bike from Snowdon to Portsmouth. And he'd previously climbed Mount Snowdon on his knees, and he'd raised, 2.3 million for a number of charities. But this man who rode his bike, literally, he's been doing charity work for 48 years and was rewarded recently. And I think of people like that who have suffered and had some challenges and had some issues that go on, and I think they've raised the money they have and shown that they can ride a bike and climb Snowdon on your knees. What an incredible achievement to show that even if things are tough, you can make anything happen. And as I always say with these inspirational stories, I hope that gives you inspiration to overcome whatever you're going through right now and deal with things in the way you need to. So take inspiration from Paul Smith. He did it with limited use of his body, and you can achieve anything you want to if you believe in it enough and you commit to it enough. So that's it for this week. Thank you so much again for listening. Please rate and subscribe and tell other people about the podcast. I'm going to share and help as many people win as many pitches as possible. But hope you take this advice on board, the thoughts on board to win more pitches. That's it from me this week. It just gives me to say thank you again for listening. I appreciate your support and for being there. And if I can help you in any way, reach out to me on all my social channels. And if you've got a question that I can help with on the podcast, then also let me know. We're happy to cover those off. But that's it until next week, and see you then. Take care. Have a great week.